Hello and welcome. I'm Bob Lichter, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project for the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I am a member of the Kenosha History Center and have volunteered there since 2015. We hope that you will enjoy these programs. I'm with Chuck Saftig, Kenosha County native and lifelong resident. Hello, Chuck, and welcome.
Hi, Bob.
What neighborhood did you grow up in, Chuck?
I grew up in the Brassville neighborhood, or the Lincoln Junior High School neighborhood. My father worked at American Brass. He worked there 41 years, and so I grew up over in that neighborhood because we didn't have a car when I was growing up. He walked to work every day and came home. And when I was 12 or 13, we moved just south of the Lincoln Park area to 78th and 19th Avenue. And went to Lincoln Junior High, and Lincoln Junior High across the street was the KYF, had what they call outposts, and they had one by each of the junior high schools. And a gentleman by the name of George Lippert was in charge of that, and they put on, we had recreation, we had basketball, ping pong, marbles, and I think it kept a lot of us young teenagers out of trouble because there was something to do at night, and had a great time with that. Growing up over on 19th Avenue, it was kind of a police avenue. There was probably about 10 officers that lived between 18th and 20th Avenue. Cy Ellison, Gordon Ellison, Joe Hebier, Bob Lowen, and a few other ones. So I kind of got interested in police work. So then after I got out of high school and went to work at Snap-on, I was there 5 years, and then I went with the Kenosha County Sheriff's Department.
You spent the whole career there, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I was there 27 years. I worked for them.
All right. Well, your family goes back in Kenosha County a really long time.
Yes, it does.
Can you tell us about that?
My great-great-grandfather, Adam Schend, he came, one of the first German settlers to Kenosha. He came in 1846, and he came with two of his children, his wife and two children. They had lost some of the other ones in Europe before he left. He was on the corner of 46th Street and 7th Avenue on the northeast corner. He built a little tavern and restaurant, and put on feeds and everything. During the Civil War, they referred to him as Papa Schend. The Kenosha servicemen that were going to Milwaukee to go to the Civil War would bivouac in Union Park, which was across to the west there, and he would put on a feed for them before they left. So he was involved in politics in early Kenosha. He had a son, Christian, who was the town marshal for the community of Southport, and then when it became the city of Kenosha, he was a fire chief at one time for there, and then he became fire chief for the Kenosha Fire Department. And 1882, I've got a picture of him with his firefighters, and kind of interesting on there because I never had a picture of him. And a gentleman brought that into the History Center in Kenosha, and I got the picture, copy of the picture. And on that picture also was my great-grandfather from my mother's side of the family. So he was a firefighter. And so it was kind of interesting to have them both on there. And Christian Schend had a daughter, Catherine, who married my grandfather, Jacob Saftig. And he was involved in having a meat market, which is was located on 7th Avenue in the building where the Boathouse restaurant is now. He was on the north end of the building. There was a small meat market there. And during the Depression, he was on the city council, and he became, he had a title of Poor Master, which was being in charge of the welfare department for the city. And he also had the city had a farm on Washington Road, which is about where Jant's Auto is. And he was in charge of that too, so they would raise crops in the summer for the people that were out of work and that. And then if the men were able to work, he would try to find them jobs. And if they wanted to be on the welfare, they would have to work also. Mm-hmm. So he was liked by some and he was hated by some.
The poor master.
Yes. Okay. And he had several sons. My dad was Victor. He worked at American Press. My dad's brother, Paul Saftig, he had a gas station on 63rd and 14th. It was him and Walt Holmes had the gas station there. And then he became postmaster, and he was postmaster for the city of Kenosha for a number of years. And then he had a son, Paul, who was involved. He was an alderman for the city, and then he was mayor. And he went for re-election in, I believe, 1980. He lost by 1 vote.
Wow.
So,
okay.
But,
Right.
I go back on the family, and I do a lot of genealogy work, and I went back on my family, and the Shen family, several of the Shen boys were on the sheriff's department. There's a Shen presently on the Kenosha Police Department, and I can go back 7 generations back into Germany, and either the Saftig family or the Shen family was involved with fire department or law enforcement, so it must be in the blood, I think.
I guess so. And,
Yeah.
your wife's family also goes back quite a ways.
Yes, it does. Going back on my wife's genealogy, the family were always farmers, and one of the great-grandfathers was, at the time of the Revolution, had 200 acres in what's now the District of Columbia. I would like to see what the assessed value of those 200 acres are right now.
That'd be interesting.
But they were on the side of the Queen, and because my wife is English descent, and they were given 200 acres of farmland in New Brunswick, so they went to Canada, and then a short time later, the family come back and came to Wisconsin. And down the line, my father-in-law and mother-in-law bought 5 acres in Pleasant Prairie in 1950 and started farming, and they opened a produce stand on Sheridan Road in what was then Tobin Road, or 116th Street. And from there, he bought additional property, and we finally wound up, we had the complete Tobin Farm, which was the big farm on 116th Street, and they farmed it. My father-in-law passed away 13 years ago, and because of the large family that my wife had, the property was all sold and divided up, and my wife and I bought what we could, and so we're farming part of that, and then we've got the produce stand yet on Sheridan Road. Funny thing about it, when I met my wife, I was on the sheriff's department, and I got a call one night of a robbery, and she was robbed down there. So after that, whenever she had closing time, if I was riding that area, I'd swing through there and make sure everything was okay. And I stopped in one night, and I asked her if, I said, "What are you doing tomorrow night? Would you like to go out for supper?" And she says, "How did you know it was my birthday?" And which I did not know. And so we went out for supper, and next week we celebrate our 42nd wedding anniversary. So worked out. But we're working the farm. She does most of the work. I'm a little too old to be learning to farm at my age. But we've got the produce stand, and October is our big month. My wife makes all the cartoon characters out of pumpkins and gourds and puts up a display there. And I have to sit down there every night because about 45 years ago, somebody drove through the display with a four-wheel drive truck and damaged the whole thing. So then after that, they started sitting down there, and I started sitting there also. So, but we go to, every fall we go to Michigan once a week, and I pick up apples and bring apples back. And I take, sometimes I take peppers over there to Michigan.
And that's the Stiles Pumpkin Farm.
It's
later.
Stiles, yeah, Stiles Farms. And
Okay.
my wife went to school to be a teacher, and she taught about 2 years. And then my mother-in-law was killed in a farm accident. And this was right before we got married. And she says, should I keep teaching, or should I take over Mom's duties at the farm and run the stand? And I said, you got to do what makes you happy. Well, that makes her happy, so she takes care of the stand.
Okay. How did that business change over the years, you know, farming and having the vegetable stand?
There are very few vegetable farmers left in the Kenosha area. You know, you've got Jerry Smith is doing some farming, or Michael Smith, his son, is doing the farming. Actually, Jerry's a couple years older than I am. And, you know, you got Haps out in the county and that. But you had farmers market in the city, which one day, each day of the week, they were at a different city park and sold produce. But now they're down to very few farmers that even come into that, because there's not the vegetable farmers. And everything we grow, we sell through our stand, rather than we used to go to, when they were farming the 200 acres, we used to go to Chicago to the wholesalers.
Okay. Did you have staff or a working group on the farm too then?
We got one full-time year-round employee who lives on the farm, and then we got a couple people come in part-time, and then our two sons and their wives and their kids help out. So.
Do you have any like a summertime picnic for them or anything, or get together? Or?
No, not really. We're too busy. It's you know, my wife is. It's very difficult to do anything in the summer because my wife's there 7 days a week at the stand, and
Okay.
I was working down at the History Center every weekend or every other weekend, and the farm has gotten so busy that I had to retire and help her out at the farm. So business is picking up. We get a lot of people. You've got the marina down by the state line there. A lot of the boat people come in and buy their fresh vegetables, and then a lot of them come in Sunday afternoon when they're going back to Chicago, load up for the week with their vegetables. And big thing, we probably got 60% of our customers are out of Illinois, 40% are out of Wisconsin. And the big thing with the Illinois people is that there's no sales tax on produce. Where you go to Chicago, you're paying 10% sales tax on top of a higher price than what you pay for vegetables up here. So they're saving money.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share about either, you know, growing up in Kenosha, family history, or?
No, I don't think so.
That's a long. I mean, going back to, let's see, really the dawn of Kenosha, 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So working at the History Center, it's finding out so many things about the county and the city. When I was on the Sheriff's Department, out on Highway 75, it's Highway 75 and Highway Double N, and there used to be a tavern on the corner called the Klondike, and about a half a mile west of there, there was an old school that it's a private house now, and it was called Old Miners School. So I was always trying to figure out, nobody knew, why is this called Klondike, and why is it Old Miners School? Where's there a mine out here? Because I'm thinking of the Klondike in Alaska, and could never find out. Well, I found out at the History Center that the Klondike, before it was a tavern there, it was a dairy, and it was Klondike Dairy. So that's how that got that name. And the school, which was just west of there, the people who had the farm there, their last name was Miner, so they called it Old Miner School. So that solved that mystery for me.
Right.
But a lot of people coming in the History Center, they'd buy a house down in Allendale or on the north side, and the ones on the north side had come in, and we went up in the attic and we found these German newspapers, and I says, well, everything north of the harbor, I says, was Germans, and I said everybody south of the harbor was originally Irish. I says you had two Catholic churches there, St. James, which used to be St. Mary's, and or St. Mark's rather, and that was all Irish, and St. George or St. Elizabeth now, that was all German.
Mm-hmm. There were a lot of ethnic neighborhoods in Kenosha.
Yeah, you had Italian neighborhoods, Polish neighborhoods. Back in the 50s, when American Motors started going, we had a big input of African Americans and a lot from Mississippi, and so that population that was over on the Brass, and then over on 45th and 32nd there. And when I was growing up by the Brass there, a lot of people were Russian or Polish over there. And so yeah, and then St. Casimir's Church, that was all Polish over there on the north side, and or Lithuanian too over there. So it's kind of interesting learning the different ethnic groups around, and how they got along with each other or didn't get along with each other, but things change and people learn to get along with each other.
Sure. And in the different neighborhoods, of course, you had a little more, maybe they're a little smaller business districts where you had grocery stores, meat markets,
right. Yeah.
that would cater to the group of people that lived in the neighborhood.
Yeah, you had little mom and pop grocery stores that were every 3-4 blocks, and it was kind of interesting, because I know when we lived over by the Brass, we didn't have a car, and there was 3 grocery stores within about 4 blocks, and we'd go buy meat at this one, and my mom would buy bread in this one, and something else there, you know. So.
Okay. And the days before supermarkets, pretty much.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was kind of amazed on 55th and Sheridan, there was a National Tea store there. First time I went in there, I couldn't believe how big that grocery store was.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Chuck, I'd like to thank you for sharing your story.
Okay.
On behalf of the Kenosha History Center and Kenosha Community Media, thanks for participating in the Kenosha Voices program.
You're welcome. Thank you.